On Memorial Day weekend in 1977, the world met a new universe with the movie Star Wars: A New Hope. And it began, this movie, with a brief battle in space. We are introduced to the Empire and to its enemy, the Rebel Alliance, to the beautiful and determined rebel leader, Princess Leia. And from there, we feel instantly thirsty on the desert planet of Tatooine, where we meet Luke Skywalker and the Jedi in hiding, Obi-Wan Kenobi. We meet the rogue pilot, Han Solo, and his partner, Chewbacca, the 7-foot Wookiee. This universe is a world of clean, white halls and grimy bars, of fantastic vessels in space and lumbering scavenger trucks. The cast includes humans, sentient creatures of all shapes and sizes, flora and fauna in all the wildness, and droids in multiple forms and purposes. We are awash with the diversity of the Empire, even as it seeks to control as much as it can and eliminate resistance at every turn. We also have the spiritual and protective path of the Force, as followed by the Jedi, and as used for destruction through the dark side of the Force by the Sith. In a time when science fiction, back in the 70s, science fiction was still really geeky, and such large-scale sci-fi movies were rare. Here is a new hope. George Lucas and the team pushed the boundaries of technology and storytelling while giving us a core narrative of human aspiration and implications for good and ill. We are reminded of what we love, what we fear, and what we will do if we let a desire for power dominate life itself. We also started down this path of an encounter with empire with a little e, entrenched and oppressive, grasping. It is one that continues to be unpacked and examined in current Star Wars shows, as Austin pointed out, 48 years later, and one that speaks to the past several decades of our American society, this encounter with empire. So the question is, how do we save what we love? How do we do so and move beyond empire? Move beyond the systems created to dehumanize us and to exploit this earth? How do we create a new hope? Now, I recognize that some folks are not familiar with Star Wars, and some folks really don't care for science fiction at all. I just want to recognize that. It's okay. We are inclusive. So first, let me thank you for being here if you saw the topic ahead of time. In Unitarian Universalism, we understand that truth comes from many sources. So thank you for your attention, even if you're not really sure what to make of the metaphor. It's okay. And second, I hope something will speak to you if you're not one of those folks who just connects with sci-fi. Science fiction considers the impact of technology, or the lack of it, on human choices and development. And even more than that, science fiction explores how we address cultural, ethical, emotional choices as finite mortal beings. It is the human story. The fandom in Star Wars is as varied as humans usually are. Some of us with Star Wars simply love a reason to fly spaceships and fighters and carry blasters and wield lightsabers. We're just in it for the fun. And some of us are drawn to the longer stories, the debating the inconsistencies in the canon or not, arguing with the infuriating choices of certain writers and directors. Oh, there's so much to debate. And we love a good chew on the debate. That's kind of a good UU spirit, right? We really love to get into it. And some of us, I gotta say, I'm kind of a fairly simple fan myself. You know, I saw A New Hope in the theater. My grandparents took me. I had just probably barely turned 5. I was small, but it stuck with me. That force, those lightsabers, that Princess Leia with a blaster, not as a weapon of violence, but of power and determination. I mostly enjoy hanging out with Luke and Leia and all of that I first loved. That force, that energy that flows through all things and empowers people in one way if they choose the light, and empowers an anger, a path of anger and conflict when they choose the dark. But I've also enjoyed growing up with this and how much the world, this universe of Star Wars, with variations on the quality, to be sure, but how it has explored many stories beyond its main cast and shown how much more there is to the Force than just light or dark. So many more of the Force sensitive folks and just the everyday folks are a mix of all those energies, just as human beings are. There is so much to be said for the exploration of science fiction in our particular time. From the Black teacher and author Adrienne Marie Brown, she says, all organizing is science fiction. All organizing is science fiction. It might not be quite so grand as thinking about empire, but it certainly is talking about how do we create more just systems? How do we treat each other humanely? How do we offer good treatment and care of the planet as well? So, all organizing is offering this vision casting into what might come. And how do we imagine that enough that we might then go and create it and test it and learn and create again? We are dreaming of worlds we don't have, but just might discover if we let them kind of spin out in one direction or another to see where we could go. But the exercise of organizing in science fiction isn't just about creating wonderful worlds. Some of the commentary in our recent contemporary politics has been critical of the liberal or the left or the democratic sides for a lack of imagination, for an ignorance or not really thinking big enough or deep enough of how bad things could get when people want to dismantle uh, dismantle a government system and benefit a few of the wealthy and dismiss basically everybody else. The enormity of what we have been encountering in this administration in the last several months is overwhelming in its volume, in cruelty, in callousness, and and also remarkably some incompetence as well. It's truly a mix. And the overwhelm is the point so that people would not be able to respond. So much has been ruined in our federal institutions, and so much is to come with the budget conversation that may take away further supports for health care and much more. We have been struggling for centuries with legacies of enslavement, with legacies of racism, with a profound wealth imbalance. It was hard to comprehend how bad things could be. But it is important to help. The way that science fiction can help us is to give us voices to articulate what's also true in our own world. There's a manifesto in the Star Wars universe uh, show Andor by Karis Nemec, and he says, There will be times when the struggle seems impossible. I know this already, alone, unsure, dwarfed by the scale of the enemy. Remember this: freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere. Remember this also: the imperial need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks, it leaks. Authority is brittle, and oppression is a mask of fear. Remember that. And the day will come when all these skirmishes and battles, the moments of defiance, will have flooded the banks of the empire's authority, and there will be one too many, and one single thing will break the siege. Remember this, he says. Try. Remember this. Try. Sometimes it takes a fictional voice to remind us that tyranny is actually quite brittle, even as it remains entrenched and dominant. It could and does break us, but it's not the end of the story. And thinking about going beyond empire, that's where I was thinking about in this moment. We are confronted with the enormity of an empire, leads to the question of how do we conceive of a world on the other side of it? If we're going to be criticized for the limits of our imagination, that's fair. It's hard to imagine how bad things can be if you don't already have some of that experience. But here's also the need for our imagination. Here's what we are called to, which is how can we bring into being a world beyond that oppression? How can we bring into the world what we love, what we hold, and get it out of our own way in doing so? So I think it really begins in many ways with love. In The Last Jedi, Rose Tico saves her colleague Finn from sacrificing himself, from making the Empire pay when he could make a different choice. He was willing to make the Empire pay and just eliminate himself. And Rose, when he asks her why she stops him, she says, "This is how we're going to win, not by fighting what we hate, but by saving what we love." Not by fighting what we hate, but by saving what we love. There are so many battles and fights in our real world. Adrienne Marie Brown and her sister Autumn Brown talk about this in their podcast, How to Survive the End of the World. I love the podcast titles, right? How to Survive the End of the World. They discussed The Last Jedi when they first saw it in 2017. And their notes include how much resistance is important, how much continuation is important. It's simply sacrificing oneself against, but for living into what you love as well. Our effort and sacrifice isn't about grand punctuation and radical breaks and radical acts. It's often about one increment of change in a larger, longer project. It is again and again. From their perspective in 2017, Adrienne and Autumn point out the flow and shift in justice movements. They were talking about the moments of elation and happiness and joy and movement, such as the Arab Spring, the Occupy movement, Black Lives Matter, that those were wonderful and, in fact, empowering. And then there's the backlash, the resistance to these wonderful moments. And as we are currently seeing today, those include attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The backlash reveals the depth of white supremacy and colonialism and patriarchy and capitalism, as they point out, it shows up in new ways, even for those who know it well. And the sisters point out we need to humble ourselves and be sparks, not the fire. The work for justice and rights and compassion is far greater than anyone expected. And when those systems push back, it stuns and overwhelms us. But what we also have a chance to gain is a deeper comprehension of what we love. We get to know better what is essential, what is important. And that helps us value it even more and decide how and when to defend it. Protecting and defending extends into our spiritual lives. From the Wikipedia post, yes, there's a Wikipedia, by Sage Seeker. Tico's quote, Rose Tico's quote about saving love is applied also to the workings of the Force. If you're simply from a spiritual perspective, they say, to the light side of the Force, which not only encompasses positive emotions such as joy and compassion, but also promotes a defensive stance. This is articulated by Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back. A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack. So the focus on saving and protecting first and foremost has been a theme in Star Wars from the beginning. And this is also visible in Return of the Jedi, the third in the first trilogy of the movies that appeared. In that final fight between Luke Skywalker and the Sith, Luke chooses to go to the Death Star, not with the intent to kill, but to save. He focuses on turning his father, Darth Vader, dun, 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 right? Large, intimidating, black, cloaked Hulk. And Luke says, no, there is still good in you. He focuses on turning his father rather than destroying the emperor. And spoiler, Luke is right. We return to what we cherish, what strengthens us, what brings life, even when what we love is consumed by fear and anger. Luke's father was, in fact, Darth Vader, and Luke's love was able to bring his father back after a lifetime of death and destruction. Fiction is often fiction. We all know not every ending is a happy one. But the story of this kind reminds us to keep on striving, reminds us to trust ourselves as well. I know some of the most poignant signs that appear in the protests of recent days are along the lines of, I fought for this 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. Why do I have to still fight this fight? And for those of us, I'll just offer, for those of us in the Gen X generation, the sign that showed up amongst my colleagues was, I didn't listen to punk rock to be overwhelmed by a dictatorship. Right? It is a reminder that it's not about any one of us, as much as it'd be awfully nice for it to be taken care of, right? It's not about any one of us, but it is about every one of us and our imagination. It's about every one of us remembering love and seeing the world in all of its fullness and complexity. We are, in fact, in so much need of imagination in this moment. I'm reminded of Israel and Palestine. Yesterday, I got reminded of the conflict between India and Pakistan. And then simply in our own world, in our own country, how much will need to be rebuilt, defended whenever possible, and how long this will take. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that my children have this wonderful power of imagination and know the commitment to love as well, because it's what they're going to be working on too. And that breaks my heart. But it is the struggle. And it has been good to see that people are finding what we love and are showing up and rallying and saying, we know and understand what is important in our lives and it is worth everything. And we will speak out and we will make this change together. We will lose as few people as possible in the process. We will save as many as we can. And this is our work of this time. So let us go forth, remembering it's not just dark, not just light, not just one empire, not just one rebellion, but it is all that we are doing together in this struggle. And with our big hearts and big minds, we can, in fact, create a new world together. May the force be with you.